Welcome. My name's Jason Boswell from Microfocus. I'm part of the File Analysis Week team, and today we're going to do another one of our data discovery 10-minute demos. And the topic today is data cleanup, but we're going to concentrate on duplicate corporate records. So let's talk about that use case in particular. Okay, so our scenario, we're doing data cleanup and rot analysis, but we're going to concentrate on this kind of duplicate corporate records. So we got our archive, and in our instance here, our archive is the Microfocus Content Manager, but we're not limited to that. But whatever we decide as our archive contains our official copies of our retention policy controlled records. But the way the business works, they often keep copies of that even before they were actually put into the archived into the record system, or we might have taken one out just to work with it. And these copies are sitting in file systems and SharePoint and in all of these other locations. Now, we need to know where these copies are because these represent an element of risk to our organization, particularly if we're going to do any kind of disposition activities. It's no good disposing from our records area if there's copies flying about the organization. They're also represent an element of risk to the organization. If we don't need these copies were put out there for the business to operate, but after a while, they can tend to get left there, and therefore they represent an area of risk to the organization. And these risks, this affects brand, affects our data privacy use cases. So the same forces that are driving change. This is one of the activities that we can do to clean up those uncontrolled copies and just make sure that our archive contains our official copies and we know that the only copies are within inside that location. Okay, so how are we going to do that? We're going to use data discovery. So let's go and have a look at data discovery. You can see my tenant here today. So let's go and first of all and check what data we've got in the system and give you a concept of what we're going to do here today. So we've got a mixture of data. It could have been metadata or content index. It doesn't really matter for this use case. When we're checking for duplicates, this is duplicates based on the hash, and the hash is counted as metadata. So it doesn't really matter what level of analysis. And I've got a number of different repositories here. I've got some stuff in Teams. I've got Content Manager, of course. This is what I'm going to compare against. Exchange, file system, it could have been emailed. So these could have been, if these are emailed and sitting in people's email folders, we can check for those as well. SharePoint or file systems. And these 46 items that sits in Content Manager, we're going to see if there's any copies of any of these items in any of these other locations. How do we do that? We can go straight to the Manage section. So we would create a new workspace based on a template. So we would call it something like duplicate corporate records or something like that. And we'd use the data cleanup template, and that gives us our categories for redundant, obsolete, and trivial. Okay, so I would just create a workspace based on that template. You can see I've created one already here today, so let's go in and then have a quick look. You can see I've already added some data sources in here just in preparation for the demonstration. I'll show you what I created. And the most important thing that we do here is we create, a couple of different locations. Now, these are inactive, so don't worry about these too much. But we need to create a data source per repository. You can't have them all existing in one data source because that's how we do the comparisons at a data source level. So we need a data source per repository, so Content Manager, Exchange, File System, and SharePoint. Okay, so you can see in our timeline, we've got some quite old data in there, but really I'm not interested in the age of the data. All I'm interested in doing here is looking for the duplicates. So across I've got Word, Excel, PDFs, emails, Excel files. I've got a mixture of data, so it doesn't really matter what type of data in there. All I'm doing is looking for duplicates of those corporate records, so any of the ones that exist in Content Manager across other repositories. How do we do that? We go to the workbooks and we'll create a new workbook, call it duplicate corporate records. I'll give it a category redundant. That means it goes into this category over here on the left-hand side. And we use the fourth option on here called task. Hit select to configure the task. So this, I'm not really wanting to do a deduplication inside those file systems. But what I do want to do is because where there is an official record, see if there's copies elsewhere. So I choose just the first option here. Secondly, I need to, when I'm comparing the sets, I need to select the data source, which is our official records. So in my environment, my content manager is my official records. That's what's work. So this is where my official information is, and I'm looking for copies in file systems, Exchange, and SharePoint. And that's about it. There's very little else to configure. So let's hit finish and then hit create. And that kicks off the process, and you can see the status is pending here, and it's going through identifying the duplicates. It's a relatively small data set, so I'm expecting the results to come back very quickly. In fact, they're back here straight away, so that did it really quickly. So I'll just refresh the page, and you can see the status bar will show me that it's completed. All right, so it's found 2 duplicate corporate records in the system. Okay, let's go and have a look and see what these duplicate corporate records are. So we've got 2 Word documents. Here, these 2 Word documents. You can review each of these and see the content of them here. Let's open up the scroller on the right-hand side and look at the metadata. You can see where they are. So the duplicates in Content Manager. So, well, the official copy is in Content Manager, and our duplicates sit in here. And where is our duplicate? This one's in SharePoint. So this is the finance report that from September that was in SharePoint, and it's sitting in. If you can look see it's actually sitting in somebody's OneDrive folder. Again, this one's sitting in SharePoint as well. So we've identified the 2 locations of where that data is. Now, the important thing to do is say, is this still useful? So we can check the dates. This is a relatively new document, so we might want to leave that in place. Is it still important to the business? So we can use some of the metadata and the information to find out, and the location of the information to find out, is this information really needed? If the information is old, it's sitting in a SharePoint site or a file system that is, and it hasn't been touched for some time, you're thinking, this really needs to be cleaned up. These are duplicate corporate records that should be removed. If they are duplicate corporate records that should be removed, we can simply go to the Activity tab, go back on our workbooks, go back to the Activity tab, and all we have to do is hit the Delete option. This will check if this has a hold operation on it, then it'll keep those duplicate copies. I would just have to select the reviewer. Who should we set? Okay, let's select Gwen as my reviewer. And this will actually submit this for approval. Gwen would say, yeah, we don't need those copies anymore. So perhaps like the owner of the SharePoint site, then we would send them, say, look, we've identified these as duplicate records. You need to review these. And if you accept that you're not using this information in this location anymore, then after they've reviewed and accepted that, these will be deleted from the system. Okay, so once these have been executed, there's a report produced. So we can report of the information of these duplicate records. So it's the same report that we have. So two ones that we had identified. And there's also an audit of those activities. So who created the workspace, who identified them as duplicates, who submitted the action, and who reviewed the action will all be included in this audit. Okay, so this is the way we identify duplicate records. We're cleaning out copies of duplicate records that exist inside any of our unstructured data sources. Okay, so we saw that we previously we just using our existing analysis that we connected through and we did analyze, and we add in extra value by making sure that the only copies of our official records are kept within inside our chosen archive repository. Okay, thanks very much. Bye for now.